It's the Cavaliers Basketball Club Podcast.
It's basketball time at the Cube.
Love picks up Curry. Kyrie Irving from downtown. Up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James.
It's over. The 52-year drought is over. The Cavaliers have won the NBA championship. Cleveland, this is for you.
Garland steps into a three.
That's what they need.
Garland now back for Allen. They got it again.
Put on your hard hat, baby.
What a block by Mobley.
Get that big stuff out of here.
Garland, Mobley. You have to be kidding me. This is unbelievable.
The shoot-around.
Welcome back to the club. Well, the Cavs dropped Game 1 to the Knicks, 101-97, as I feared they might. I feel so bad for those fans that spent their hard-earned cash to see that one, and maybe even blew out their voices in the process.
I guess I do feel bad for you, Adam, because they look lackluster to say the least. But also, I'm really jealous of you that you got to experience the Cavs playoff atmosphere. We are thrilled that you are listening to this episode, and instead of an ad, we would like for you to subscribe to Apple Podcasts and Spotify to keep following our show. And if you're seeing this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We appreciate the support.
So as many of you know, I can be long-winded, so allow me to give an example. As stated at the top of the show, on a last-minute decision, I decided to purchase a ticket to the game way up in the nosebleeds, so I'm here to report firsthand the pathetic showing the Cavs put up overall. The playoff atmosphere was there, the fans showed up to make noise, it was honestly one of the loudest games I'd ever been to, which is why my voice is gone, and the organization had built out all of the feel-good content. Highlights throughout the season and bold statements of glory to come. But then the game started and it seemed like the only person that remembered to play the game was Mitchell. I know that this episode is a reaction episode. I will leave most of my thoughts for the questions, but that's the teaser here. It was a tough game to see in person. I can't imagine from home. How about you, Colin? What did you experience?
Well, I feel kind of lucky because I digested the game over about a day because I had to watch it in bits just because of family stuff. But it was just equally as aggravating because you could tell that the team, as you mentioned in your earlier comment, didn't show up, and we'll get into that more. And not only did the team not show up, but the coaching staff seemed to be outflanked very easily, even though they had basically a week and a half, even 2 weeks to prepare for one opponent, which is extremely rare in the NBA. And we'll get into that more because this will be a bit of a vent sesh, I think, for both of us. And so let's get into that.
Colin, as I mentioned, the Cavs didn't play well and lost Game 1. What were some reasons you saw that contributed to this loss?
So I think overall, the moment was just too big for them, which is really unfortunate. I think, as we mentioned at the top, Donovan Mitchell was really the only one who showed up and understood what was happening and the impact of all of what needed to be done to get a win. And the effort, the physicality, the mentality, the emotional, the psychological, everything, Mitchell was present. And he had some missteps in a couple spots, but it was partially because nobody else was stepping up on that team. Darius was okay. Mobley and Allen were but it was really a team driven by Donovan. And I think that was a really big problem because everybody became really reliant on him. And it wasn't basketball. It was watching your best player, which we've seen before in Cavaliers history. We saw it every year that LeBron went to the playoffs. And some years it worked and some years it didn't. And Mitchell's never going to be a LeBron, but you can definitely have your players, your teammates, act similarly where you have them ball watch a lot and not do the extra little things to contribute. I think the biggest thing for me, and then I'll hand it off to you, that really came across was the lack of physicality between Allen and Mobley. They just were not setting screens well. They weren't getting people open. They were getting out-rebounded. And it wasn't just them getting out-rebounded because of the fact that Allen and Mobley weren't super physical, then LeVert was letting bad offensive rebounds by him. Mitchell did that a little bit. Garland did that. Everybody that came in, they just were all getting out physicaled, and I think a lot of that was because we weren't setting any type of tone or fighting back in any way in the second half. There was a little bit in the first half, but really once the second half started, the Knicks really just put it to us from a physical angle in every aspect of the game. And that's really everything, not everything I saw, but that's a little bit of what I saw in the sense of just why they weren't able to get the win.
Yeah, all great points. I think I have to start off by saying that last episode we mentioned the two Knicks players we were the most worried about, and it turned out to be very true. In the first half, Randall looked like he would be unstoppable and probably score 40 points before the end of the game. Thankfully, the Cavs figured him out and slowed him down in the second half, but then Brunson caught fire and had a majority of his points in the second half. And so they very frustratingly kept us at a distance, just a hand's distance most of the game. And we just could not get over the hump. If we got it within a tie or within a few points, we would be right there with a three-point shot or a bucket to take the lead, and we could not get it to go down. You know, I think we're going to talk about it in question 2, but the rotations were pretty rough. I think that glaringly for me in this game, the bench was kind of the scariest revelation for me, that we don't have one. And it's kind of scary because when you think about the first 25, 30 games at the beginning of the year, it felt like we were extremely deep, that we had a second and third string to lean on and to rotate certain guys around and kind of keep people fresh. And I think we had hoped that when Ricky Rubio came back, that would only become more true. And somehow, over the last couple of months, we've really become a starter-heavy team. And so I don't even really know how to identify a sixth man on this team. If Karis LeVert is going to fall off a cliff again, then instead of us winning this series in 5 or 6 games, we're going to lose it in 5 or 6 games because we don't have Kevin Love. Which I don't really know when I want to go off in this episode about his decision to leave and what that means for our prospects in these playoffs, both this series and any series after. But that was another thing that really stuck out to me in watching the game, that we were missing his veteran presence and his leadership off the bench, and we really shouldn't be missing it. I don't think the Cavs had any intention to not be using it right now. So to look back at the question, I think, because I know I don't want to get ahead of us onto the next one, you know, it's easiest to, I think, just break down the stats to look at the fact that we were out-rebounded 51-38 and 17 offensive boards. Their small forward shooting guard in Hart had 10 rebounds. And that's just a team that understands that being scrappy in the postseason is what wins you games. And I just saw a team that had been there before and kind of was more calm and ready to perform. And the Cavaliers just kind of looked lost. They never really controlled the tempo. They never really had any offensive runs. They just kind of held on for dear life. And that was about the best I could say about it.
Yeah, we'll get into the rotations more. Just talking about the bench, like what you talked about with Josh Hart there, that was the other thing that was frustrating. It wasn't just that our bench wasn't scoring; they weren't scoring. Period. They weren't making shots. Jetty was the best contributor off the bench offensively, and then also Jetty took on the assignment of guarding Brunson. He wasn't amazing, but he put in the effort. And that was the thing that really frustrated me is Karis LeVert and Jetty are veterans. Rubio is a veteran. Dean Wade is not a veteran in the sense that they are, but he looked a little lost as well. And none of them were scrappy in any way. I mean, we've seen LeVert in previous games get offensive boards just out of nowhere. He'll just snag that. He wasn't boxing out his player. Come on. I don't play basketball. I never played basketball. I know that boxing out is one of the things that you learn on day one of Pee Wee basketball. Like, come on. That is a physical attitude of you have to make sure that they stay off the boards. You know they're the best, if not one of the best, offensive rebounding teams in the NBA. You know they're going to come in and do that. So it was that stuff, too. It was just a lack of overall understanding that they needed to be even scrappier against a team that relies on being scrappy to get wins. So what it was to me overall, and nobody's really said this, it was the Knicks won the way the Knicks wanted to win. The Knicks didn't look amazing, but that was a Knicks game, period, through and through. The Cavs put none of their stamp, nothing on there. Mitchell wasn't able to fight up that hill and get a win because the Knicks just were able to put all of their presence on the game, and it was frustrating.
Yeah, and when you look at the stats and see that Ricky Rubio had more rebounds than Dean Wade, LeVert, Osmond, and Garland, that's just pathetic.
And Rubio played horribly.
Yeah, he's still hobbling around out there. He was out there for 6 minutes. He got 2 boards. Come on, guys. Like, you've got to have your head on a swivel and look for your opportunities. It's not just about shooting the ball. The other thing I would mention is, it was a frustrating thing to kind of watch them have no pace to the game, that they never really dictated any of it, and that they, Allen and Mobley would kind of dribble underneath and kind of turn and throw the ball, especially Mobley would kind of throw the ball at the basket rather than any kind of finesse or touch. He just looked a little bit ready to jump out of his shoes, the fact that he was there. So I think that there's going to be a lot to calm down about and look forward to in Game 2. But Game 1 was difficult because it just didn't seem like we played our style of basketball at all. I think you're completely right. The Knicks came out and played their style of game, even to a level where they almost blew it at the end, which I had turned to some Knicks fans behind me that I heard them go, "We're not the Knicks that we were 2 years ago," and I went, "Yes, you are." It was like I had verbal Tourette's. It just had to come out of my mouth, and then we almost beat them, because to me, all night long, I saw a team that was losing the game, not a team that was winning the game. If that makes sense, right? The Knicks were never really winning it; the Cavs were just losing it. And 19% from 3 in the first half. It just, come on, man. Like, this team cannot shoot under 30% from 3 and be out rebounded and win any games in this postseason.
A lot of people online have been saying that JB's rotations are off. From a fan's perspective, which player or players would you have on the floor more or less?
Well, I'm going to try not to go off on a tangent here because I don't know exactly how to specifically answer this question without starting with a caveat, which is that I really don't understand the modern NBA game today and how coaches have fallen into this trap of thinking that it's smart to play 8 or 9 guys and that's it. What's the point of the regular season? Why do they game plan and use rotations throughout the year at all, other than to just keep guys fresh in case they make the playoffs? I thought the point was to become a cohesive team where every player on the team at any given night can contribute to winning. And I grew up, as the fans of our podcast would know, because I say it often enough, I grew up a Bulls fan. I grew up in the Chicago area when I was a boy. And we used everybody down the bench. Even if it was 3, 4, 5 minutes, it made a difference. You'd have guys come in and hit a big 3 in a pivotal moment and then go back down and sit down and stay there the rest of the game. But it was a big momentum swing. And we won the game because of it. It was one of those pieces, those cogs in the wheel that you have to achieve to win a series where now you're playing against people that truly are your equal. They're matched up to you evenly. And you have to find an ability to get above them. And we worried about that coming into the Knicks series because they are on paper, it would seem better than us. They just didn't play very well at home. They played very well on the road. And we were fearful they'd come in and drop game one. And I was hoping, really hoping, that a reason why we would do that wouldn't be because of JB.
Mm-hmm.
But after watching the game and then going home and looking at a few highlights after the fact and kind of mulling over my thoughts, I have to put some of the loss on the coaches here and how they seemed unprepared. As you stated in question one, they seemed unprepared, and they were a bit in front of their skis and just not ready for the moment. And it reminded me an awful lot of the play-in games. And that worries me because it doesn't seem like JB is willing to adjust when it counts, to go away from his own thinking when it's just not working out. So with that long setup, I'll say a couple of players and then pass it your way. Where's Danny Green? Dean Wade should have played more than 7 minutes. Lamar Stevens was not there. Where was he? Like in a game where Okuro's not giving you a shot, you know Lamar can hit it from the corner. Let him try. And in a game where LeVert is just, his net negative had to have been 100. I mean, it was time to look to other people in the second half. And the fact that Green and Stevens and Wade and even Windler just sat there cheering on the team instead of out there trying to contribute a few minutes and get something different going. We just got to see more of the same not work all night long.
I thought that Okoro was solid, and looking at the game, I do agree with you. Where I would have loved to see Lamar is that physicality, because you and I have mentioned this since this Cavs iteration has really come in, is we do have a lot of nice gentlemen, per se. It's kind of similar to what Darius Garland has said in the press before. We have, quote-unquote, a lot of nice guys. And Lamar and Donovan Mitchell are the guys who are not that. And I think that if Lamar played a little bit of power forward, that would be helpful as far as a physicality angle would be concerned, because he's just a dude that you don't mess with on the floor. He's what we need. We need a little bit of that attitude, and we were definitely getting punched in the mouth throughout that game. And so that would have been great. I think Wade could have used a few more minutes. I think that Danny Green needs to be used in the right way at the right time, and he needs to be used, end of story, to get threes, period. Their shooting is just atrocious, and their offense has been lackluster it was solid last month, but they were going against a pretty weak set of opponents. And then Green played in 2 of those games, and his shooting was amazing too. So Green is a 3-time champion. He will do the best that he can. His mobility isn't great, but he's a really good shooter, and he's really savvy at getting buckets. And that's what we need right now. And the other guy I would say that I would point to that should not have a single minute on the rest of the playoffs possibly is Ricky Rubio. Rubio came in, I rewound this because I watched it today. Rubio came in, immediately turned the ball over on his first possession, and then had 2 back-to-back fouls, ticky-tacky fouls. And that means that is a guy who is your veteran, in the sense of your veteran backup point guard, not able to handle anything. I mean, he did a little bit of positivity where he doubled Randall once, but he is not able to stay in front of people. And those who listen would probably say the same thing about Danny Green, except Danny Green can shoot from the outside. Rubio can't even shoot anymore. He wasn't really that great of an outside shooter anyway. So I would say that JB really needs to assess what he wants to do on the floor and how he wants to dictate a win, instead of going with the tried and true formula of, we always put these guys out on the floor. And I think that Rubio his minutes need to go away. I think that Lamar and Wade and even LeVert, I would give LeVert a chance again, because I don't think LeVert can't get any worse, but he's also, when he's on, he's on. And then you have Green. You have 4 guys who are all bigger, which I think would be helpful too, who can all have some offense. You would also throw Jetty in there as well a little bit. But Jetty can also run the point a little bit. So I'm a little bit of everywhere, but I just think that right now, overall, the rotations off the bench just aren't working. And it goes to your point, which is JB should have figured this out in the second half and actually said, okay, here's what we're going with. Instead, he just threw Jetty out there and was like, let's see what Jetty can do. And it just was a little frustrating. So,
yeah, I mean, you've got Lamar Stevens with the junkyard dog mentality, and every time people have a major game, they get the chain put around their neck. Well, that's because of him. You know, he is such a huge part of our soul on this team, and he's not out there fighting for anything because he just has to be relegated to the sideline. And in a game when you've got LeVert playing as poorly as he did, especially in the second half, needing some big stops, I'd rather have Lamar out there playing defense than LeVert out there playing offense. Danny Green is really my biggest thorn in my side about this, because I was excited when we picked him up. I thought, oh, good, this is great. Now we've got a second kind of Kevin Love option off the bench. Well, then, of course, Kevin Love freaked out and left. His reasoning still makes no sense to me. Oh, I want to be out there playing with my guys. Well, guess what, Kevin? You're not. You're down in Miami, not playing with your guys, and your guys need you. So, as I stated at the top of the show, you know, it's a real thorn in my side right now that we don't have him, simply because he made a very poor judgment about what the Cavs intended to do with him at the end of the year. And now, because rumor has it from our frequent guest Jackson Flickinger, he wrote an article to start the playoffs, that apparently Danny Green didn't get enough playing time to play his way into the rotations for the playoffs. What does that mean? He's played 165 games in the playoffs for his career. 165 games.
That's enough minutes.
Yeah, one of the most seasoned playoff veterans we have on our team is Donovan Mitchell, and he's got 40. 40 games. So you're telling me that Danny Green, with all of his years of experience in the playoffs, can't come in and contribute 7 to 10 minutes for you and put up some shots when he's shooting about 50% from 3 since you picked him up?
Yeah.
Come on. There's no excuse for not at least giving him a try in game 2. He's a professional.
Green's defense is not going to be great right now because he is recovering from a really bad injury. So what do? You put Lamar out there with him, and you put and you have Isaac out there with him as well. So you have 2 extra defenders, and you'll have either Darius or, you know, Mobley and Allen as well. So they have enough defenders around there to support Danny Green. We've seen that before because we know that Jetty's not the greatest defender, and the team still gets by somehow.
Karis LeVert, 18 minutes, 3 points. I mean, even if you give Danny Green 7 minutes and he makes those 3 points, I'd rather have him out there not playing defense for those 7 minutes than LeVert out there for 18 minutes not playing anything at all.
The final seconds.
Game 2 is Tuesday night at 7:30. Is the series over if we head to New York down 0-2?
I'm not going to say that it's over, because in a best-of-7 series, I think you have to go down 0-3 before you can really say it's most likely over. Especially with a team like the Cavaliers that has been coming from behind all year long. As I said, I think I should cut it out of one of our episodes, but I was very worried that the Cavaliers would fall on their face, and the way that they have in the start of all games this year, in the first halves of all games, and they would fall on their face in the first half of the series that they play. And it is my worry that they'll lose game 2 and then have to scrap their way back and make it a best-of-7 series and be so tired for the Bucks series it won't even really be worth it. So I don't think it's over, but I think that it makes the rest of the playoffs pretty daunting and hard to imagine anything positive happening if we don't get this turned around by Game 2. And I think even that, we have to go in to Game 3 and smack them in the mouth and take that game, because it's just the kind of statement that you need to make when a team comes into your house and instantly snatches from you the home court advantage you said that you coveted so much. So I don't think that it's over, but I think that the death knells will be coming if they drop 2 in a row. It won't look good coming into Game 3. We'll have to sweep them at home in 3 and 4 and come back to win in 5 and 6 possibly. So how do you feel about it?
I think it depends on how they lose Game 2. I think if they lose Game 2 kind of in this similar fashion where everybody looks a little bit lost except for Mitchell, I think that that's pretty telling that the series has some major problems. And I agree that once you're down 3-0, usually the series is done. In all of these first round series, you're seeing right now that Golden State just lost their first game. They could go down 0-2. The Bucks just lost their first game against the Heat. They could go down 0-2. A lot of these series, it happens where you have to claw your way back and you win in 6 or 7. And the NBA is becoming a much closer, the talent level is all getting much better. So a lot of these teams, the games are going to be closer. The series are really going to go, they're going to be nail biters. But I do think it's more of how they lose Game 2 than the fact that if they lose it. Because if it's a similar mentality of not changing your ways, not of understanding who you are, and not dictating and putting Cavs basketball first and foremost and dictating how this game goes, that will be a bigger issue for me. Even if they go down, if they lost by 15 on Tuesday, but they still dictated 1 or 2 quarters, I would still be like, oh, okay, if something happens where they just get some bad foul trouble or something and they're just not able to fight their way through it, then I would be less concerned. But if they lose again like this, where it's nobody really has the wherewithal to focus and understand the moment, then I'll be more concerned, because this is a really young Cavs team. We've always talked about it, but they need to mature real quick to make sure that they stay in this series and understand everything that needs to be done to get their first playoff victory.
Garland, I think, has a tall order to go out there and shoot more than one shot in the fourth quarter and actually get more than one assist in Game 2. That would be really helpful. But I just have to ask you a quick question, though. If we come out and we play similar in Game 2, don't you envision a blowout? Because I feel like the Knicks played poorly. So if the Knicks play well and we go out and play the same way, I think we'll lose by 15, 20 points.
I think that the Knicks could definitely blow us out for sure, but I also think the Knicks are just a weird team where it's kind of like what you mentioned. They kind of get in their own way sometimes. So I could see where they would still have enough empty possessions. I mean, this is why they traded for Josh Hart. Thibodeau knew, hey, these Yebos get in their way all the time. I need to get one of the best offensive rebounding shooting guards / small forwards in the NBA so that we have a second chance, because these Yebos get in their ways all the times. If Jared Allen and the small forward Okoro usually, or LeVert, and Ivan Mobley don't start tracking where that ball is going to land when the shot is going off, they need to figure that out quickly, because that is real pretty. In the NBA, there are whole documentaries about what Dennis Rodman did, how other guys like that rebounded, and what they do is they track the trajectory of the ball, and they should know how Donovan Mitchell's shot or how Darius Garland's shot is gonna hit the rim by now. You've been playing with them for 80 some games. Figure out where it's gonna go and track it down, please.
Well, and, I do have to give them a little bit of credit, though, because Allen had 14 boards and Mobley had 11. But it still just felt like when they needed to pull one down, they could not get one to save their life.
Yeah.
And the rest of the team just did not have that as a priority.
Yeah, they didn't help.
And something else that we didn't mention, Mobley was 4 for 13. I mean, if he had shot his normal percentage, we would have had a much better outcome. So, again, I think that if we correct just a little bit, we can easily win Game 2. But if we come out playing the same way, and the Knicks actually have a good game, I think it could be embarrassing.
They were also 70% from the free throw line, so that's the other thing. If they hit 5 more free throws, the game is tied. It goes to OT possibly.
Yeah, Garland and Mitchell both missed some big ones. It was gut-wrenching.
Thank you for listening to the Cavaliers Basketball Club podcast. Let's go Cavs!